Meglos is unlikely to be anybody's favourite Doctor Who story, but it's a special one for me, as it's my first memory of watching the show. I don't remember any actual stories until Logopolis, but I do remember K9, and the image of the Doctor looking like a cactus has stuck with me for all these years. So I must have seen at least one episode of this as it was broadcast, and I must have enjoyed it as I've been a fan ever since. Looking at it now, it's an odd story. It feels like the last light-hearted adventure before the new regime starts to crack down and the show becomes very dark and serious. There are lots of scenes in the TARDIS where it's just the Doctor, Romana and K9 messing around, and they don't actually land anywhere until halfway through episode 2, which must be a record. There is a reason for their late arrival, as they are placed in a time loop, or chronic hysteresis, by Meglos, the villain of the piece. Despite being basically a talking cactus, he is ridiculously powerful. Not only is he capable of putting the TARDIS into a time loop, he can also possess other people's bodies and change their appearance however he likes. If anything, he's too strong, really. Fortunately, he does still need the help of a group of bumbling space pirates, who are dressed in possibly the most ridiculous costumes yet. But they are all very entertaining to watch, so I'm not complaining. Once Meglos has trapped the Doctor and taken his place, he heads off to Tigella, a deadly world full of killer plants, which look suspiciously like triffids. The only human habitation is powered by the mysterious dodecahedron. We don't see it until well into part 2, but we do have to put up with a lot of tedious arguments about it from the scientists and religious zealots who populate the place. You can tell them apart as the scientists have terrible blonde wigs and the priests are all in red robes. Meglos steals the dodecahedron, which turns out to be a massive 12-sided cube that he somehow manages to make small enough to fit into his pocket. Another power to add to the list. And of course, once the Doctor shows up, he is blamed for Meglos' crime and sentenced to being squashed to death by a stone slab, which is exceptionally barbaric if you ask me. Finally, the Doctor manages to escape and tracks Meglos back to his base on Sulphur Thura, where he's planning to turn the dodecahedron into a Death Star. Fortunately, the Doctor manages to sabotage it, so it blows up Sulphur Thura instead, killing Meglos and all of the bandits in the process, which is technically genocide, which may explain why he's summoned to Gallifrey at the end. But before that, there is a very brief return to Tigella, which does not address how their city is meant to function going forward without any kind of power. It's all very rushed, and the episode turns out very short, so you can't help wondering what may have been cut and why. The standout actor has to be Jacqueline Hill as Lexa. She last appeared in the show as original companion Barbara Wright, who set the standard for all the companions that followed. It's a real shame this was a few years before it became common for old companions to return as the same characters. It would have been amazing to see Barbara and Ian come back during the 80s. Instead, we just got Susan, and Ian didn't come back until many years later. Her character here is basically the High Priestess, and she does a fine job in the role, but I'd rather have Barbara back. Tom Baker also stands out this time, not so much as the Doctor, but when he's playing Meglos. The cactus makeup certainly helps, and it's easy to see why my younger self was so captivated by it. But even without the makeup, he plays Meglos with a serious, gritty tone that we don't normally get from him. He could easily have gone on to play a gangster or criminal, and on this basis, he wouldn't have done too badly. The DVD has nearly an hour of extras. Meglos Men is the longest, an 18-minute feature, reuniting the writers as they travel around London and talk about writing Meglos. The location filming makes this a lot more interesting than the usual behind-the-scenes documentaries when they're all talking to Cameron in the studio. And at the end, they even visit Christopher Bidmead, who's wearing a baseball cap and looks ridiculous. There's an 11-minute feature explaining the new scene sync technology, which is definitely a step up from Underworld, but still looks a bit primitive nowadays. There's a 13-minute feature on Jacqueline Hill, where people like William Russell and Verity Lambert talk us through her life story. And finally, there's a 5-minute feature where a university lecturer talks about the laws of thermodynamics, which is important for understanding Logopolis, but not so much this story. Overall, it's an entertaining story with some fine performances, but the script does leave a lot to be desired, so I'll give it a 5. Next week we're off to Wee Space with Full Circle, and Adric shows up. Brilliant. So press subscribe if you want to see that, and I'll see you next time.